Hi everyone, this is Amy Johnson-Crow, and welcome to this week's Archives.com live stream. This week we are going to ask the question, an average family? Putting your ancestors in context. One of the things that I really love about genealogy is not only finding a person's parents and finding those basic bits of information about them, when they were born, when they married, when and where they died, but finding out about them as a person, really being able to try to understand them and the lives that they led. Because that's really, to me, that's really the joy of genealogy, is really trying to understand our ancestors. And that's what we're going to take a look at more today, is finding ways that we can better understand our ancestors so that we can get more out of our genealogy as we're doing it. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I have a lot of ancestors in Perry County, Ohio. It's in the southeastern part of the state. It's a rural county, a lot of farmers, and my ancestors who lived there were mostly of German descent, but as researching the families that married into my family, there are a lot of Irish, there's, as I said, a lot of German. There's a lot of migration out of the southern part of Pennsylvania and Maryland, Northern Virginia, that sort of mid-Atlantic migration that went across into southeastern Ohio and into Perry County. So as I was doing some other research, working on a little side project, I came across this death certificate for Frank Fargo. Now, Frank Fargo died in Perry County in 1938. And the thing that struck me right away when I saw this death certificate was his birthplace, Hungary. Now, as I said, the research that I had been doing in Perry County, which, has been for quite a while, I wasn't finding Hungarians in Perry County, Ohio. So when I saw this death certificate, it really made me curious. What is this Hungarian doing in Perry County? It just doesn't seem average. It doesn't seem normal. It doesn't quite seem to fit. So what's going on here? Well, the thing to do when you're trying to find how typical or atypical someone is to look around. And a great way to do that is to look at the census. And when you do that, look at more than just your ancestor. So I started with finding Frank Fargo in the 1930 census. Now remember, he died in 1938. So I found him in the 1930 census, and as I expected, it shows that he was born in Hungary. His wife was also born in Hungary, and their children are born in Ohio. So, that's pretty much what I expected, but still that doesn't answer my question of, is he typical, is he atypical? This, if I just focus on his entry in the 1930 census, that isn't going to answer that question. But if I look at the entire page, and I've kind of compressed it down a little bit here, but every single one of these orange marks that I have here on the side all indicate someone who was born in Hungary. Again, this is that same page that Frank Fargo and his family appear on in the 1930 census in Perry County. And looking at this page, I find that there are 13 people born in Hungary. I had never heard of such a thing in my research in Perry County, so, what's this all about? Well, a way that I can do this is to take a broader look. And that's how you build context, is that you look beyond your ancestor and you take a look at his surroundings. Now, what I want to do is take a closer look at Frank's surroundings. Now, I've looked at that one page and I've seen that there are 13 people who are born in Hungary. But what if I look a couple pages either way of that page where he's listed on the 1930 census? So that's exactly what I did. I looked at 4 pages of the 1930 census. I looked at his page, I looked a couple of pages before, I looked a page after, and I focused on the heads of household because since Frank was also a head of household in 1930, I want to have an even comparison. So I'm just going to focus on those heads of household. And to begin with, I'm going to concentrate on looking at their birthplaces and their occupation. And when I did that, I looked at their birthplace and I saw that for the heads of household on those 4 pages, 21 were born in Ohio, which not unexpected, this is an Ohio census. 9 of them were born in Hungary, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in Austria, and 1 in West Virginia. So those 4 pages of the census, there's actually a fairly large percentage of the people who are reported being born in Hungary. And also I looked at their occupations. Again, focusing on the heads of household, I had 23 who were coal miners, and then it drops dramatically. The next highest group were railroad workers with only 4. 3 of them had no occupation listed, and then 1 each for blacksmith, farmer, an oil well worker, and a baker. So we get an idea of that immediate neighborhood that Frank Fargo is living in. Yes, there are a lot of people born in Ohio, but there's also a substantial Hungarian population. And by far the most common occupation was coal miner. So why was this a surprise to me? Well, if you look at the map of Perry County, Frank is living down here in Monroe Township, down here in the very southeastern corner of Perry County. My research had all been focused up here in Thorne, Hopewell, Madison, and Reading, up here in the northern part of the county. So just how different are these 2 parts of the county? Well, let's take a look. I looked at that same 1930 census, and I looked at one of my ancestors, and I did that same study, did about 4 pages of the census around him, 2 pages ahead and page after. Look at their birthplaces, again, of just the heads of household. 47 were born in Ohio, 1 in Illinois. There are no Hungarians, there are no Austrians, there's no one born in West Virginia, no one born in North Carolina. It's a completely different makeup. But look also at their occupations up where my ancestor was living in the northern part of the county. There are no coal miners. They're mostly farmers. 39 of the heads of household were farmers or farm laborers. And then it drops off dramatically. We have 4 people who were working in a sand plant, and that was sand that was used later to make bricks, which is what this man down here was doing. So it's a completely different makeup. Yeah, if Frank Fargo had been living up in my part of the county, yes, he would have been very unusual, would have been very atypical. But for where Frank Fargo was living, he was actually pretty normal, pretty common. You can also use the census to take a look at wealth. In the 1850, 1860, and 1870 censuses, there is a question about real estate and how much real estate that person owned. What was the value of it? And in 1860 and 1870, there's also a question about personal property, the value of their personal property put together. And personal property are going to be things like cattle and horses, carriages, things that can be moved. So we can take a look at these columns in these censuses and get an idea for sort of an economic standing. How did they fit into the socioeconomic makeup of this neighborhood? Because what we see a lot of times, and looking at this entry for Emanuel Cooper or I'm sorry, Emanuel Cooper writer in the 1870 census, and he has land valued at $2,000. And if you look at this in isolation, what's a common reaction that I've seen is that, oh, $2,000 in 1870, wow, that was a lot of money back then. This guy was rich. Well, was he? How did he stack up against his neighbors? Was 2,000 a lot of land to have in 1870? Let's take a look. So again, I did that same method of looking at 4 or 5 pages of the census, and I looked at all of the other heads of household in the area. 6 of them reported having no land. There was one head of household who said that his real estate was worth less than $1,000. There were 6 who said that their land was worth between $1,000 and $4,000. There were 10 who had land valued between $4,000 and $6,000. And we can see the breakout here. 8 who had between $6,000 and $8,000. 4 who had land between $8,000 and $10,000. And 4 who had property worth at least $10,000. So again, looking at that one record, and I'll go back to it here. If you look at this one record, oh, $2,000, that's a lot of money. He was rich. Well, compared to his neighbors, not really. Our Emanuel Cooper writer is going to fall into this category right here. But as we see, there are many more people who have land valued more than he does. We have 10 who have property worth at least $4,000. He only had 2. So he's actually on the lower end of landholders in this area. But again, we also have that question of, okay, so how much was $2,000 in 1870? If $2,000 in real property is on that lower end of property holdings, just what is that comparable to today? How can we take that $2,000 and figure out approximately what that would be worth today? And that's a really good way that we can picture what these numbers are really telling us when we're looking at values. A site that I really like to calculate the value of money is a site called Wolfram Alpha. And we have the URL up here at the top, wolframalpha.com. And it's so easy to just put in the question that you're trying to answer. So what I want to calculate, what I want to know about is how much is $2,000 in 1870 worth today? And that's exactly how I'm going to do my search. How much is $2,000 in 1870 worth today? So I entered that as my question, I hit enter, and I found out that $2,000 in 1870 is worth approximately $37,000 in today's money, in today's dollars. So we can see that that's not, you know, in terms of how much real estate you have, how much land, how much your house is worth, $37,000 really isn't a lot in today's money. So that gives us sort of a better idea of just where he was standing, where Emanuel Cooper writer was standing back in 1870 compared to his neighbors. And also, when you're trying to put your ancestors in context, trying to figure out more about them and the lives that they led, don't overlook those county histories. Now, county histories are great for our genealogical research, but we really don't utilize them to their fullest advantage because so often we either go straight to an index, or if it's been digitized, we'll plug in the name and it'll be full text searchable, and we pull out the names of our ancestors as they appear in the county history and we move on. But if we look at this, and this is considered sort of a standard history of Perry County, it was published in 1902, written by Clement Martsolf. And again, a lot of people will want to plug in the name of their ancestor. It's in digital form in many places. But if you look at the table of contents, and we see not only history of the area, but we see about land surveys. We see a reference to the Scioto land scheme, Zane's Trace, the refugee tract, the evolution of the county, village settlements. We have a whole section on churches. So maybe that's going to give us some more background about our ancestors. What type of churches did they go to? And if we go on, then it's also talking about some industries in Perry County, including the coal mines. And when we read this section on the coal mines of Perry County, we find that they are really confined to that southeastern part of the county, down where Frank Fargo was living. There aren't any coal mines up in the northern part of the county. It just doesn't work that way. So if we look at these county histories beyond looking at the references just for our ancestors, we can really get a better grasp on the lives they led and can give us a better idea of who they were as people. Next week on the archives.com live stream, we are going to ask the question, what are you missing in the pre-1850 censuses? If you've ever done any work in those early censuses, like 1790 through 1840, you know that they just list the head of the household by name and everyone else is just a tick mark. They're just a hash mark showing an age and a gender. But there's actually a lot of information that we can get out of this. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. What are you missing in the pre-1850 censuses? That will be next Wednesday, September 11th at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, stay connected with archives.com. You can do that in a variety of ways, whether it is on our blog, liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, or subscribing to our YouTube channel. And our YouTube channel is great to subscribe to because whenever we add a new video, you'll get an email and you will find our past live streams have been archived and put up onto our YouTube channel. So some topics that you might have missed, talking about we've had live streams about working with common names, how to find your ancestors' origins, all sorts of great topics. So I encourage you to check out the YouTube channel. So if you are watching this on YouTube, I encourage you to join us on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. Join us in the chat room. We usually have some great conversations, some great questions and answers afterwards. And for those of you who are watching this live, again, I encourage you to pop over sometime to our YouTube channel to see some of those live streams that we've done in the past. So that's it for me today. Until next week, this is Amy Johnson Crow wishing you happy researching.